Good morning and welcome to Brandenburg News Network. I am Donna Brandenburg, and it is the 31st day of March 2025, and welcome to our show today. Today we have Vicky Davis on, and we're going to be talking about mortgages and mortgage fraud as well as money laundering. And we're going to also be talking about maybe some uncomfortable subjects, but we're going to need to attack and talk about all of these things. We're also going to be talking a little bit about Iran and this Jeffrey Goldberg's involvement, say, like in the leaked messages, which I don't believe are leaked, but I think it was intentional. So anyhow, morning, how are you? How you doing, Vicky? Are you there?
Are you talking to me?
Yes, I am. So I'm trying to get going this morning. It's like one of those days that was just so it was a hard start this morning after the weekend.
Yeah. This is the second time I've gotten up today. I got up at about 2 and I worked for a couple of hours and then went back to sleep. So
I did too. I was up at about 3 o'clock this morning and I couldn't sleep. And so I got up and I was, usually when I get up, I research, and I was listening to a video that a friend in Canada, in Alberta. I'm actually kind of going a go-between in some talks that are going on right now. And they sent me a video, this group did. It was very, very interesting, but it brings up a lot of questions on what's really going on here. And it goes through some of the connections having to do with, say, Jared Kushner and the events that followed that in the purchase of a building, which I find really, really interesting because, you know what, I'm going to stick to my guns and say that everyone and everything needs to be questioned. The minute we stop questioning, we have been taken captive. So, and that goes for even the things that President Trump is doing and such. I'm an unapologetic Trump supporter. I like President Trump. I like what he's doing. But sometimes you got to question if there are things going around him. One person is not, how do I say this, able to do this all by themselves. It's the people around the leader that determine the leader's trajectory and how effective they are. So when we see things, we're kind of included in that group because it is, if it's self-governance, if we are a nation of self-governance, if we want to direct the direction of the country, we are in that circle of influence and also the circle of people that can make the changes, right? It's not that we sit back and expect him to be a king with decrees. If we see things that he may not know is going on, I think he knows pretty much most of what's going on or everything. But I also think that we're supposed to be part of this and to question the things even going on around him. Did it actually come from him? Is it something that was foisted upon him? Like, I believe that he was forced to take Pence in his first presidency. I do. And I honestly think that right now there's some people that he's playing ball with in order to, let's just say, keep himself alive. Okay. We're talking about a large organized crime syndicate that is global. And sometimes nothing is clean. Nothing is completely clean in this earth. Only thing that's clean is God Almighty, and he's the only one that's clean and never changing. But here we're stuck with each other, and we're stuck with certain systems, and we're stuck with people that have sold out to evil for a while because we've allowed it to continue for decades, centuries, etc. So we're going to have to keep our eyes on things significantly. And I think this whole signal leak, first of all, it's kind of like bullshit. Okay. That we know if you're just even kind of sort of involved, you know that there's nothing digital that can't be intercepted and or hacked unless you've got something that's sending through an active phased array antenna, which is a direct communication in one direction. That's what they use in our fighter jets to be able to communicate with each other without being picked up by ground forces or something else. Okay. Anything else can be hacked. If you've got anything digital out there, plan on it being hacked. It's going to be hacked. So for them to say that they had they had communications through signal that was not hacked. They know that it can be hacked. Okay, that is communications for dummies right there, if you believe what was going on at face value. But with that said, there's more to the story. So like when I saw Mike Waltz talking about President Trump and how much allegiance he had to him, I thought that guy is a major behind kisser. He never really addressed the problem. He was blaming the people around him, specifically that Alex Wong that he said is an assistant that placed him in there. Everybody on that call, when you place people on a chat like that, people there can see who is being added. So there wasn't anybody, there was no surprises there. So my question is why? Why? And assuming, because I will always assume that the good guys are in control, because there'd be too many people dead if they weren't. And so my question is why? Well, let's dig into this just a little bit, because I want to show everybody this video, which I think is fairly significant, about Jeffrey Goldberg. And there are some main points here right off the bat that we can take away from this. Number one being he was a writer for The Atlantic. Watch.
Jeffrey Goldberg is one of the media's Middle East experts. He is a staff writer for The New Yorker, has worked for the New York Times Magazine and the Washington Post. He frequently appears on PBS, NBC, ABC, CNN, and NPR news shows. What the Washington Post neglect to tell readers is that Goldberg is hardly neutral.
I believe from a very early age in Zionism in a very, very personal way.
After college, Goldberg emigrated to Israel, took Israeli citizenship, joined the Israeli army, and served at Israel's notorious concentration camp, Ketziot. A Palestinian Christian leader describes what it was like to be a prisoner at Ketziot.
It's like being exposed to death 24 hours a day. In fact, I remember this incident like upon arrival to Ketziot, the camp administration was trying to force prisoners to build more sections. And prisoners refused. So the army, the detention center commander came in after all detainees were standing in rows and started shouting at us, and then he said, "Who is the man among you?" in Hebrew. And two persons stepped to say, "Yes, what do you want? If you want to talk it, we can talk it." And he immediately grabbed the gun from the hand of the soldier and shot him dead.
In an interview in The New Yorker, Jeffrey Goldberg described what it was like to work as a guard at Ketziot.
I thought that was fairly interesting. And so the fact that he was on Mike Walt's contact list leaves a lot to be questioned, right? We need to question, why did Wong, who was hopelessly tied in to the CCP, why was he even allowed in the sphere? And I really like what the president of El Salvador did, with basically stepping in the room with everyone and said, "You're all under investigation, because I will not be taken out from the enemy within. If you can't stand up to investigation, then you won't be here, and you will be removed," and such. And I would love to see President Trump say that to every single person that's around him, and say, basically, guess what, guys? You know what? We're cleaning house, and we're starting with you. Everyone's going to be investigated, totally investigated. And with that said, if you can't stand up to the investigation, you're going to be prosecuted for treason and or for sedition or for whatever crimes are appropriate in each situation. But that you either play ball, you're honest, and you're standing with the people of the country, or serious charges are going to be followed. And I'm kind of questioning if that should be happening a little bit more aggressively within the Trump campaign right now, or the Trump administration. What's your thoughts on that?
I completely agree, because it seems like that everybody's staff is peppered with the enemy within, and unless you know their full background, you don't know whether or not you actually have an enemy on your staff that's going to stab you in the back. And so it's such treacherous times because of the way this whole insurgency in our country is working. And there are so many enemies. I mean, geez, just within our borders, there are the CCP and the Russians and gangs, from South America and mobsters, and it's just like one big mixing pot of criminality.
Well, and I would love to see President Trump alpha up on this and address everyone around him in a very serious manner and say, guess what? You're all under investigation right now. If you got nothing to worry about, then rest easy tonight. But if you're here to create problems for the commander and chief, and president, which the people of the United States have chosen, it's a duly elected president, it is time for you to start sweating bullets if you've done the wrong thing, because we are going to clean house, and it's going to start from the top, and it's going to roll right down through every department, every person that's serving in this nation, anyone who takes a paycheck. And if you don't pass muster, guess what? Not only no pension, no nothing, and prosecution and seize all their assets at that point in time. Seize them all. Seize all their assets as traitors, and then try them for treason and let the cards fall where they may. But that's what really needs to happen. If we want the United States to go forward, we can't just keep appointing people to these unconstitutional branches of government. We need to rip through here and clean them out, and then build on a solid foundation. And I really do believe that. How can you build on something that's so corrupt? I don't think it can be done. Now, he's a smarter person than I am, and so are the people around him. So I'm not going to criticize him as what he's doing, because I don't have all the information, right? But looking at it from the outside, to have Mike Waltz, when that spot where he was talking to President Trump, he didn't really address the problem. He just sat there and pledged allegiance to President Trump and such. But why didn't he come out and say, guess what? This guy is done. This guy is done. We're absolutely going to go through here. This is a serious situation, and I'm not going to accept any excuses for it. So if everybody there knew who was on the chat, which they did, what's the strategy? There's got to be a strategy there, right? But if you're going to do it right out in the open and say, this is what I would do, it would be an immediate, there would be some immediate actions. But I don't really think there was any leaks. They didn't really have the criteria for leaking military secrets. It was a communication. So from what I can see, but there's a lot of strategy there, and I'm not sure what it is. If it was what they're saying on mainstream, fake stream media and alternative media, it's all the same anymore, right? I don't believe any of it. You have to look at it and go, they all knew who was on the chat. They knew it. I'm kind of out on this one as a highly skeptical individual.
Yeah, I have to research Mike Waltz, see who was around him, and
well, it was Alex Wong and his wife Candace Wong. They've got ties directly to AsiaSat, which is military and military communications for the Chinese military. Now, answer me this: how can you have somebody that's that close to a cabinet member who has got direct ties to the Chinese military. Unless you're telling them, guess what, we've got a backdoor into your systems, you guys are screwed. Now that would be kind of epic, really, if that's the strategy, and they were infiltrating in reverse. Fantastic, bravo, but at face value to all the people that believe in headlines, there's two ways. There's only two ways this can go. They've either infiltrated them to be able to get in there and screw with them. Perfect. If not, then it needs to be taken down in a very professional manner.
Mm-hmm. Well, and connections to the Chinese military. That reminds me of a story that just came up recently about Hutchison Whampoa. And I found Hutchison Whampoa a long time ago. And they try to make you think that the China's Belt and Road System started only in 2013. Well, that's not true. There was an article in Newsmax, I think it was, in the year 2000 by Phil Brennan about the communist Chinese encircling us. And what it is that the strategy for global conquest has been through the commercial transportation system, using ports as the centers of what would you call occupation, internationalization. And it's the strategy of capturing ports and inland ports. That's the trick. Most people don't understand that you can have an inland port that is actually international territory. And the only and that was done in order to allow landlocked countries to have access to the sea. And it was put into international law in the Barcelona Statute or Barcelona Declaration of 1921.
Vicky, can you check your microphone? It's Love said something that she can hardly hear you, and we want to make sure that everybody can hear what you have to say.
Oh, okay. How's that?
There you go. I think we got that better. That's awesome. Is that better, Love? Let me know. So.
Okay.
And also TGAB. Yeah, let me know if this is better, because sometimes I actually rely on our audience to help us know whether we're actually being able to get through or not.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so once you understand that ports are not just a function of connection to the ocean, well, it is connection to the ocean, but they don't have to be directly on the ocean. They can be inland. And that's what Kansas City Smart Port was. It was an inland port. And the way the Chinese breached our territory was through Mexico. In 1995, Vicente Fox announced his economic development plan, and it included 2 ports in southern Mexico. And those ports then, through an international highway system, came up, crossed the international border between Mexico and the U.S. up into Kansas City, with Kansas City being the terminus, for this inland port route. And then from Kansas City spread out through the interstate system. So essentially, an interstate highway becomes a shipping lane. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. It really does. It's sort of like our roads in general were created to move the army around or the militia. Let's put it that way. I think that's more accurate. And they got so much civilian traffic on it, the interstate highways did, that it it changed function just a little bit. And I think that's what happened with the ports and the port roads too. Am I correct?
Well, it actually, the interstate highway system was called the Dwight D. Eisenhower Defense Highway System, and it was built for defense.
Yes.
But they also allowed commercial traffic to use it, and because more commercial traffic is on there than military, of course, people think it's just for commerce, but it was never that way.
Yeah, so let's go back to the inland ports and such in the economic regions. So I was talking about Canada, and I'm working on being a little bit of a liaison between some things that are going on in Canada and the United States, which is kind of fun for me. You know, it's educational, and I find it a game of mental strategy to kind of sort through this. Right? There is some real questions. There's a group in Canada which basically is alleging that Canada is not a country. And I had Doug Force on here with the Myth is Canada, and he said the same thing. He said it was never officially confederated. There was never a process. It was basically a move by Queen Victoria to adopt the British North American agreement and turn it into they renamed it to the Constitution Agreement. And then she just went and said, okay, this is our Constitution. Bam, we're done. But it was never ratified by the provinces up there. So there's a group in Alberta who cannot stand the Mark Carney at all, who's up there. And so they're like, he's a communist. And when you look into his background, he pretty much is a communist. Okay. And so they're saying that they want to be done with their association with Canada and be a sovereign province. And I see why they're doing it. And for the United States, it actually wouldn't be a bad plan to go in that direction, because then you cut the communist component, the globalist communist component from Canada, as well as the allegiance to the British crown, out, and just say it's the people of Canada and the people of the United States for trade and etc. It's really been pretty interesting. But except
for the fact that in that corner of the United States, there is an international regional organization with our governing officials. Excuse me a minute, I got a tickle on my throat.
Yeah, no worries. Yeah, but everybody says your sound's better now, so that's good. Thanks for giving us feedback, guys, because we were, there's certain things that we can't check when we are actually on live. So thank you.
Okay. Anyway, this Pacific Northwest economic region, that's really important that it is an economic region, is part of the global system and part of the strategy to break up the United States. And it includes the states of Washington, Oregon, Idaho, and Montana, and then the Canadian provinces immediately above. So I think what they're getting ready to do is to declare that an independent area, separate in its own right. And that's part of the world strategy, is to break countries up into regions, just like they did. The Soviet Union was broken up into the common independent states.
Goodness. That's okay.
Seems weird, and this is going to be a conspiracy theory, but every time I start to talk about some things, I get a tickle in my throat.
Certain subjects.
Yeah.
I get that. So I think that we need to be fully aware that the United States right now is absolutely under the same system as China. We're not any different. They're not better, or we're not better than them right now. We're in the same boat. And the reason why I say that is because it's all about economic capture. And when you look at the
Uh-huh.
public-private partnerships, the public-private partnerships is basically the government taking over business. And even though they haven't formally said it, the structure is the same, just like them taking over the land. And just so you know, there's going to be a bunch of stuff that I'm going to post out and show you how the casinos are such a big part of what's going on. The casinos that we have in Michigan, of course, it's all on Native American land, which in my opinion is a bunch of crap because I was born here, which makes me a Native American. I don't care what they say. Okay. And so what are you going to do? Like kick all of us off and say, we really don't have the right to be here either. That's a bunch of crap. But they put the casinos on the reservations because they're technically their own nation. Therefore, the way to see, there you go. Listen, I just did it the same thing. The way to approach that is the fact that they're using the casinos to money launder. And I've got a friend that works at one down. So not only do I have friends that have worked for them, and they'll tell you what they do. They'll come in with like big bags of cash and such, and they launder it through the casinos. But not only that, the human trafficking networks are attached there too as incentives for people to do their dirty work, right? And so when you look at what's happening with the land grabs, with how they're giving the preference to the developers and the mortgage fraud that's going, all of that, the developers are getting the developers as well as people who get contracts, say for the roads and such, they're getting these huge contracts that's how they're money laundering. And then they can take that cash, make it, some of it at least, disappear, and then go through the casinos to do that. So, and then there's no way to actually check on them because they put the things on basically areas that they have deeded to them as foreign soil, so that they're not able to be under surveillance.
Yeah, that's just like that shooting in Las Vegas. You remember?
Yeah.
And because that's the whole thing was shrouded in mystery, except that, you know, he had connections to the Philippines, and he was a gambler, big time gambler, supposedly. Darn, that tickle is just, it's terrible. I almost can't talk because of it. But whatever he was doing seems to have been a money laundering situation. And now it causes me to question whether or not he was actually selling guns. Was he selling guns? Because his deal was real estate. And so that's something to go back and relook at.
And unfortunately, look at the reservations and such. The reservations we have in Michigan, I have a friend who lives on a reservation, and she has been very outspoken about it. And she says too, she's like, I don't understand why they're in your face that, you know, we are Native Americans. She said the same thing. She said, you were born here, you're a Native American, a Native Michigander, right? It's nonsense. And she said the same thing. But she said the amount of despair that a lot of people feel, because you can look at the drug use and the alcohol use and all this stuff on the reservations. There's a problem here, just like there is with every single government structure on the planet, which has been taken over. They've all been taken over. It gave a promise to the people that you're going to have a safe place to be. And then the next thing you know, everything was turned upside down, and they're just being used for those types of activities.
Right. And they're being used, and they're being used by mobsters.
You bet. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah. So they're in a really bad position.
They're in a bad position. And so now, you know, it's like, it's like, you know, I'm going to go back. Oh, we can't say anything about Israel. We can't say anything about Native Americans. We can't say anything. All these little protected classes of individuals. This is how they are absolutely using people for their own gain. I don't even think most of the protesters that go to these absurd pride events and such are actually gay and lesbian. I've got a lot of friends who are gay and lesbian. They hate it with a passion. They're like, we feel used, and they basically used us in order to make the rest of the United States or the rest of the population hate us. They're like, we hate this sort of thing. And I, in fact, have a good friend who has this is true, and this needs to be said. I have a very good friend who has a bar in Grand Rapids. She kept it open for people in the gay and lesbian community to have a place to go to because they were so isolated. A lot of us did that. I did that at my barn, but for me, anybody was welcome. I didn't care who they were. They were welcome to come. We fed everybody for months, every day. We were feeding whoever showed up and making sure that people weren't alone. We had people that lost individuals. You're welcome. You could come, blah, blah, blah. So I got to talk about this because this is the crux of what happened here recently. So she has got a bar which has been very friendly to get the gay and lesbian population, right? There's another bar in town who basically has attacked her and used the gay pride flag group, which is pretty much, in my opinion, nutso land, to attack her bar. So she wanted to hang an American flag up, and they basically called her a traitor to the gay and lesbian community. She's like, no, I'm lesbian. That makes me less, I'm not a traitor to anyone. But she said, everyone should be able to be here, and it doesn't matter who they are. So she put up an American flag. So there was a great amount of people in this area that basically said, don't go to her place of business anymore. And then she's got great food. I mean, she's a very nice person, and they've got great food and that sort of thing. So they literally did an economic attack on her for not being a purist, not being this is a place where our community has to feel safe. You know what? I don't know about you, but I could care less if somebody's gay or lesbian or whatever they are. I can get along with anybody, right? And so it just doesn't matter to me. If you're a person, I'm here as a representative of God to try to make things better on this nation. I'm not going to sit there and go, okay, you're gay and lesbian, I'm not going to talk to you. That is not going to happen. It's just not going to happen. And I refuse to be pressured by any segment that wants to have a divisive wacko out there pushing their hate agenda, their true hate agenda. And, I think it's some time to call this out. She has the right to fly whatever the flag she wants to. She wants to fly an American flag. I'm like all kinds of with her on this. Yay, right?
Yeah.
And so and to stand for unifying one nation under God and unifying the people, not sitting here going, I want special privileges because I'm a ... fill in the blank, right? Mm-hmm. So anyhow, that's been a recent thing of mine that's been going on. But I don't think, so going back to what we're talking about, I think the majority of these people that are protesting and or are standing up for any of these little splinter groups and such, I think they're paid provocateurs, just like happening at the casinos, which we were talking about. They're using people and what they identify as to destroy the United States of America. If you can't sit down with somebody, whatever you think they are, you're weak and pathetic.
Yeah, well, it is. It's a strategy of war. But in Nazi Germany, there was a group of people who, and they were communists, by the way, who practiced well, they call it an art form. I don't consider it art, but that they're human performance artists who basically are counterculture. Whatever the main culture is, they make war on the main culture. Here's an article I wrote about it.
And then guilt people for not saying, "Oh, you're so special. We all need to join into this." I am not going to join in with crazy. Okay. I'm not going to do it. It's like there's nothing out there, and I will speak my piece. And it's like I can get along with literally anyone, but I will speak my piece. It's like if you're going to mutilate children, I think that this should be your first clue that you are probably on the wrong side of the world, and we need to have a discussion based on lawful practices, and show them for how they are money laundering into all of these situations. It's all a front for an economic advantage. That's all of it is. Pritzker has made so much money because he's behind the majority of the trans clinics. I mean, look at you just have to look at the structure. It's all about the money.
Yeah, it is. And breaking down the culture, breaking down the society, and it's in the breakdown where they make their money. As institutions fall apart, as families fall apart, it loosens up a lot of wealth, and these gangsters scoop it up, and that's really what happens.
Yeah, they
do. And I discovered this accidentally. Dadaism. I was writing about the futurists from back in the 1960s. And I remembered Buckminster Fuller because I was living in California when he became a big, what would you call him? Kind of like a guru kind of thing. My husband was very into him, Buckminster Fuller, and we even went to look at dome homes. So I remembered his name, and I looked him up, and he had a little odd thing that he said in one of his interviews. And so I researched that farther, and it connected to Dadaism. And Dadaism as a, quote, art form of counterculture, making fun of the main culture to break it down. So it's really interesting, that, and that was a tactic of the communist revolution in Russia, and then it traveled to Germany. And I'm sure you saw the movie Cabaret, right, at some point in time?
I have not, because never play Trivial Pursuit with me, because I will fail on anything that's pop culture. I stopped watching TV, and I maybe watch like a movie or two a year. I just don't watch much of it. And I probably haven't for, let's see, I'm 60 years old. I probably haven't for 35 years at least. I don't like TV. I don't like to do it. If I'm going to do something, I'm going to watch something stupid. Like, I don't know, I'll watch like engineering fails or bridge collapses or something like that. But I really don't get into that sort of thing. So,
Cabaret was a big musical on Broadway in New York. And then they made a movie out of it.
I believe that is Liza Minnelli, and that I know enough to understand that I think that that's one that she's in. So I know something about it, but that's as far as it goes.
Okay, well, it was a political movement, and so, and that's the thing about cultural cannibalization. It's a very small percentage of people that participate, but generally speaking, whatever it is that they're doing is so foul or so corrupt or criminal that the majority of people won't pay attention to it.
Well, and look at how that goes with human nature, our fallen nature. People will try to grab on something new, something that relieves their boredom, because they don't have purpose a lot of times. And so they're grabbing on something all the time to fill that need to either be in control of the world or whatever. And why is it that human beings are drawn to stuff that's just, you really got to fight that as human beings. I mean, you can see it in our culture that people will go towards things which are probably not in their best interest. It's truly a sad thing.
Yeah.
Easier to go to.
I don't understand because I've never really been a follower, but most people are. They want to feel like,
me
feel
either.
like they belong. I don't want to belong. I mean, get back away from me. but most people are not like that. So
yeah, there's something severely wrong with us. We're just like going, no, I'm not going to join in your craziness. Sorry, you can be crazy all by yourself over here, but but we can think for ourselves and not have to be part of your group like a bunch of turkeys. You ever see turkeys in a group that you go up? My uncle raised turkeys right when I was a kid, and us kids used to think it's funny, hilarious to go up to the big turkey pens. And you could like make a noise or clap, and the whole bunch of them parrot the same thing. Oh, the whole field would erupt, and it was like a wave going from one turkey to the next, right? So there's your visual for today of what's going on and has been going on for a very long time.
Mm-hmm.
Human nature. Herd animals, unfortunately, to a certain degree. That's unfortunate, because if you get your identity from things or from what you do or what you have or who you hang around with, you're probably on a crash course for failure at some point in time. If you base your identity on God and the unchanging nature of God and the goodness of God and all those characteristics that we know that are pure and right, and move towards that rather than groupthink, you're probably on a better path just for yourself and such. I actually did a huge Bible study this weekend that I was working on, and I'm going to be launching a one other website. I'm not going to tell you what it is yet because I haven't got it populated with enough information, but I am going to put something up there on how, let me pull out my notes on this, because it was a very long note, but it really highlights the fact that people really want to belong to something if they're not close to God, and they will give over to, let's just say, a reprobate mind. And that's what I was looking into. And I'm not doing this as condemnation. I'm just saying what a reprobate mind is. And I did post something about it this weekend. Here's a verse. It's like, and even as they did not like to retain God in their knowledge, God gave them over to a reprobate mind to do those things which are not convenient. So what is a reprobate mind? Paul describes how people who reject God and his truth are given over to their own sinful desires and debased or reprobate mind, leading them to embrace lies and immoral behavior instead of God's standards. Other translations might use debased mind or depraved mind, but the idea is the same. And the longer that you stay within that culture or grabbing onto things, you will literally go down that path away from God, because one thing leads to the next, to the next, to the next. And I think that it's really kind of interesting. And it really, the Greek word for reprobate here is adokimos, meaning unapproved or worthless, a mind that can't discern truth from lies or right from wrong. Let's see, the verses 29 through 31 list the resulting behaviors: envy, murder, deceit, pride, and even approving of others who do these things. The idea is that rejecting God's truth leads to a downward spiral where people embrace worldly lies as their new truth. And how do we avoid that and stay within discernment? So that was the Bible study that I did this weekend and wrote out. And the new website isn't going to be just about a Bible study type thing or about learning. It's about learning to think critically and understanding the base of why we're in error on things and why we don't have discernment, or why the world seems confusing when we're being bombarded. And we are being bombarded. I mean, it's like, this life is like, you remember the kids' ball crawls?
Ball crawls? No. What was that?
Okay, so when my kids were little, it was a huge deal and it's disgusting. Okay, but the ball crawls, the kids would go to, like, say, McDonald's had a bunch of ball crawls where the kids would go in there, crawl through the balls, they're playing all the time. And all the moms who took their kids out of school because they were sick brought their kids there. It was disgusting. Okay, in order to give them something to do and get them out of the house while they're sick, which of course was a germ bath, but it was like being in a pit of balls and having balls thrown at the kids from every angle, right? Our society is like that right now with the amount of information that's hitting us. We are in an adult information ball crawl from hell. And in order to stay grounded in what's really going on, you have to identify it for what it is. And that's how I frame what's going on right now with the amount of information. Unless you're really grounded in the truth, a shiny thing's going to take your attention away and keep you busy.
Yeah, and especially with people and their tendency to be followers. So
right,
it creates a cultural, I don't know. It's really, that's why I think a lot of people just turn away from it because they don't want to or can't stop enough to try and sort everything out. Or they just grab onto, a politician and, believe everything he says is gospel.
Yeah. Oh, everybody's going to fix my problems. That's a king. Okay. You're just taking instructions at that point. Oh, we've got this great person that's in office. So I've got to go play cards with Millie over here and Agnes. And I'm just going to sit here and do nothing. And you know what? We're going to get in our little fractured groups and say, you're gay, but you're not gay enough. You're black, you're not black enough. You're a female, you're not female enough. It gets into all that area. And, you got to follow the narrative to a T or you're ostracized and people are terrified to stand alone. I don't understand it. I really don't.
I either. I have, you know what? I grew up as a non-Mormon in a Mormon town.
Oh man, okay.
And so that was just fabulous conditioning to stand up against the crowd. And so even when I grew up and moved away, I could never be a joiner because of my experience growing up where I was an outsider. And I really thank them. I appreciate them for being that way because they made me independent.
And I think that's important. It's like, the things that you stood for created who you are and how you're able to research and question because you don't care if somebody likes the results. The truth is the truth. And you're going to stand on that instead of doing it for other people's approval. You do it because it's just the right thing to do.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I appreciate that a lot. Well, it's just like what I've said many times in like the political parties, the duopoly going on here, the two-party system, the Republican, the Democrat parties are actually, because they've taken foreign money, they are both a domestic and foreign threat to the United States. Now, there you go. It's going to like piss everybody off to say that. I've said it before, but it's the truth.
It is.
And if we participate in that, you're guilty with them.
Well, and with how they're trying to reorganize the world, everybody should go look at the National Endowment for Democracy.
Okay.
And research that because there are 4 groups under the umbrella of the National Endowment for Democracy. That's ned.org, ned.org.
Wow, that was like the first hit when I started typing it. That was amazing.
Mm-hmm. There's the Republican Institute, the Democrat Institute, the Business Institutes, which is the Chamber of Commerce, basically, and the labor unions. And they all four work together. It's kind of like a system, what seems to me like a turnkey system that they try to drop onto other countries.
Look at that. So data centric, that's what we've been talking about, was the the technocratic tyranny. So this is a thing that, people of Michigan, we need to be smart about this. It's like Tudor Dixon looks like she's going to try to run for governor of Michigan. Well, they were information sellers. That's what they did. That was the main job of what their family did. So you're just going to get another globalist in office. You think it's going to change? No, they're going to continue to hire in people who are newscasters. And what are they hired for? To deliver a message. They're professional message deliverers.
Well, in our foreign, the State Department systems where they're trying to build a global system, NED is an important component of that because it has the four major institutions of a country, right? The left and the right, and business and unions, representing the workers. And so that's a really important organization to research and to understand.
Well, and I think that the things that you talk about, I never hear anybody else ever talking about it. In the economic, it really is the Dutch East India Trading Company structure. It never really went away.
Exactly. That is exactly right.
It's piracy.
Well, yeah. And the British Empire, which the British Empire is not Great Britain. The British Empire is a function of the Foreign Secretary's office of their State Department. And it's connected to the City of London, the 1 square mile, and all of the countries that are part of the British Commonwealth. They don't call it the British Commonwealth anymore. They call it just the Commonwealth of Nations. But, I mean, that's what really concerned me when Trump said, yeah, he wouldn't mind rejoining the Commonwealth. Well, I mean, that's like red alert sirens.
I'm going to tell you what, there was a video I watched this morning that was sent to me from the group that's up in Canada, and they were basically pointing out that is a real problem. When he said that about joining the Commonwealth, like I've got a lot of questions about that. So it's like, and I am a Trump supporter. However, what's the strategy behind it? Would be nice to know, but nobody's going to telegraph that out to the open, and tell everybody what's going on.
Yeah, you want to subjugate yourself to the King of England, for crying out loud?
No, and heck no. I don't even want to do that to the federal government. I think the federal government needs to be cut about 85%. Let's just get in there and start nullifying the whole thing and go back to states' rights and put the federal government in its place, which was what we need to do. No federal taxes, zero. Go by apportionment, and that is it. No one should pay direct taxes to the federal government. And all of these organizations and nonsense we got going on, start clipping their wings a little bit, because you know what? They wouldn't exist if the United States didn't fund them.
Yeah, that's true.
Well, I know you and I are on the same side of the page, on the same side of the page, same sheet of music, all on this, because we feel the same way. So I mean, I'm not telling you anything you don't know. I'm just like spouting to whatever's listening, and whoever's listening right now. Hopefully they're people that are actually in a position to do something, but to get people to think about things differently, perhaps.
Yeah, and I do have to say it is very difficult, very intense to overcome your sense of normalcy, that the world isn't what you saw through your tiny little vision of the world. That's not what the world is. And it's very difficult to overcome that normalcy bias. you know, like most people, including myself, thinking that there's not much going on in the world that I didn't know about, which was so wrong. Absolutely just so wrong. And so when you start finding out all of these things and tracing the history and all of that, well, the world is nothing at all like you thought it was.
A lot of years of conditioning, brainwashing, and putting people to sleep to think that they're, you know, we're going to go and do these normal things in our homes with our kids and in the communities and such, which is what way it should be. But that while we did that, the cultural cannibals, I love the words you used on that, as well as the governmental cannibals have come in and eaten up everything around us and destroyed the fabric of this nation while we were just living life. And unfortunately, that's exactly what they do, and we're going to have to address it. This is never something that I ever envisioned myself getting involved in any way, shape, or form, politically, doing a podcast or anything like that. But when you start seeing the fact that the country is literally sinking right before your eyes, you have to get involved, or whatever fabric's left is gonna just completely crumble. And that's where we're at right now as a nation. Is every single person has to get out of their comfort zone and say, I don't know anything, including myself. I don't know anything, but I'm going to ask people, what do you know, and try to patch this thing together without the cultural engineering that's happened through the news stations. And I don't just mean the ones that most people listen to. I'm talking about the influencers. I'm talking about the podcasters and all of the people that took USAID money, and there were 5,000 of them.
Mm-hmm.
This is a huge network of influence to influence public opinion. It's all tied in together.
Yeah. Well, yeah. And that's the purpose that the media serves, is to feed you your opinion.
Yes, to confirm what you think it is based on how much you've been conditioned before that moment. So it's conditioning upon conditioning to, you know, reinforcing what you believe, which if it started with a lie, they're just reinforcing the lie that they put out there in the first place.
Yep.
I got to tell you something funny. You're going to think this is hilarious. So doing a bunch of research and knowing some really good researchers, guess what we found? We found that I actually have a nickname.
Oh yeah.
Out in the bad guy world of the internet, and the nickname is D Black Swan.
Oh, I'll be darned. That's not a bad nickname.
No, I'm like, I'm gonna wear this with pride. So guys, I'm D Black Swan. So I might have to change it to the Black Swan. I think this is hilarious, you know, and unpredictable. Yeah, you know. Probably a little bit unpredictable on what's going to happen, because, you know, I like you, I'm able to pivot when things don't go exactly as I would like them to go, or I believe to go. If new stuff comes out, you got to pivot on that and do the right thing, regardless what anybody else does.
Mm-hmm.
Supreme unpredictability.
Yeah, that's well, because every day I learn something new. You know, I've been at this for like 20 years, but there's not a day goes by that I don't learn something new.
Yeah, and then don't you feel like that day you go, okay, well, this is good. I'm glad that I'm comfortable being in a state of perpetual ignorance. You know, that's really what it is it's okay navigating from a state where you don't know everything, because I know who is in control. That's God. So, you know, it makes my job fairly easy at that point in time. So, well, thank you for being on today. Oh, I didn't put your banner on. Let me see if I've got a banner here. I can see Jason's backstage here a minute. And let me see if I can find your banner. I've got it. Hang on a minute. We'll get it up here. What? It disappeared. We'll have to put it out there next week, I guess. Okay. Well, I'll create another banner for you. But anyhow, Technocratic Tyranny. The Technocratic Tyranny is Vicky's website. Go check it out. You're gonna unbelievable amount of information there. Just crazy amount of information, which we should all be involved in or know to right this nation. So anything else you want to add to this?
No, except to say I'm working very hard to come up with a subject index, and I hope to have it in a few days. I can't promise that, but I'm trying very hard to do that. But I've written so many articles, and it's all history. There's no advertisements. There's no anything. There's just my research, and so anybody's welcome to come read. There's no paywalls, nothing.
See, I love that. That's a true patriot for you right there. Somebody who's just doing it because it's the right thing to do. I love you to pieces. Thank you so much. We're going to go to a quick break, and I'll be back in about a I don't know how long my little intro is, maybe a minute, and with Jason Ickes, and I'll see you next Monday. So yep. I'll let you know. Okay. I'll let you know if we're going to have to push it out a day. I've got a group of people that I'm going to be meeting with, so I may end up. It may end up being later than that, but I don't know yet. But I'll let you know. Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. Have a great week.
See you next week.
Now I'll be right back. Good morning and welcome to the second hour of Brandenburg News Network. I am Donna Brandenburg, and it is March 31, 2025. Welcome to our show, and I'm going to bring Jason Ickes right on. Hey, Jason, how you doing?
Great. How are you doing, Donna?
Fantastic. Did you have a good weekend? I
did. I had a wonderful weekend. How about you?
Yeah, I had a very interesting weekend. It's birthday season around me, so we were going out for dinner and all kinds of stuff going on, which was really pretty fun. So that was a nice weekend. Got a little bit of horse riding in, and so that was good. So what are we talking about today? I mean, you and I could sit and talk for months on end and never hit the same subject, right? So election integrity, elections, the mortgage fraud. Let's see, we can get into a whole bunch of other things.
Oh, there's so many topics that we cover. I think one of the big ones coming off of the weekend here, we had the speech in Wisconsin. There's a big election going on there for the Supreme Court. Elon Musk was there, and he did a presentation. He handed out a couple $1 million. And one of the things that he presented was 7 or 8 million illegals are on that have Social Security numbers. I believe it was 6 million were given out in 2024 alone. So they show the scale of each year how many Social Security numbers given out to illegals, and massive spike in 24. So they rushed to give all these people, and as they're describing and talking about this, they discuss that these people are also receiving Medicare, Medicaid, or whatever. So they're getting social welfare benefits off of the Social Security numbers, and the government is setting this all up. And this whole process was established and told by the Biden administration. It was a coordinated effort, and so they were paying people, they were bribing people to come here illegally. But one of the things that they didn't cover in this discussion was how they did talk about some of the more gruesome aspects of it, with the rapes, murders, and all that stuff going on along the border, and how the cartels are involved and all that. But one of the things they didn't cover was how e-plata and remittances work, and how the Bidens were profiting off of remittances. So not only is the where the Biden's using our social welfare benefits, our tax dollars, subjugating all the rest of the Americans to pay for these benefits. But on top of that, between Joe Biden, Hunter Biden, and their family, they own almost 8% of E Plata through various shell companies won it. So the E Plata is a payment processor. It's a digital payment processing. It's kind of like a think of PayPal. It's like PayPal. So they want to send, you're working here in the United States or you're collecting welfare benefits here in the United States and you want to send money home. Well, that's what a lot of them are doing. They're sending the money back home to pay for their passage because their family's being held hostage until they pay back their travel, because the vast majority of these people did not have the money to pay for travel into the country. So their families are being held hostage and they have to pay for their travel. And the Bidens are collecting 8% essentially. And it's like 10% for the big guy. Remember that?
Yeah.
So they're collecting some on the back end of all of these payments that are going back to pay off the cartels. So this entire thing is an orchestrated scheme. One, to keep Bidens and get them wealthy. They're all, the Bidens and the Clintons, they're all corrupt, right? They're just there for the dollars and the prestige. But then you have the Obamas, and the Obamas are idealists. They're part of the communist cult collective, right? They're the ones that are pushing all of these Marxist agenda items. And you've got China is the foreign collaborator that is undermining the country, propping up the Obamas, propping up the Marxists in the country. And they're using all of these corrupt politicians to implement their strategy. And their strategy is one that they had, it had been published, and it was a strategy for taking down Russia. Because originally they had a war plan to go and conquer Russia, and it required 7 million people over 7 days flooding the Russian border. Just civilians walking across the border, overwhelm their immigration system, overwhelm all their legal systems along the border, and then the military would just come through because they would have no way to contain them or to stop an incoming army. And that's essentially what we're facing. What we're facing right now is a bunch of corrupt politicians were essentially paid off to allow China to invade the United States, and not just China, but other countries as well. We know that terrorists and foreign military were paying the cartels to get into the United States. Some of them were paying $15,000, $20,000. They were paying cash. They were flying directly into Mexico City, and the cartels were helping bring them into the U.S. So we have sleeper cells all across the country right now. Not only that, but they open their prisons up, and a bunch of these countries open their prisons up to let the violent criminals out of their prisons and into the streets of the United States. One, for destabilization, for distractions, to keep the law enforcement and everything else distracted, but also so you have paramilitary recruit operatives now for sleeper cells. So now they have coverage and protection. You've got a massive organized criminal infrastructure, and there's so much of the undermining of our institutions and our government is all a result of this deliberate foreign invasion orchestrated by China. And this was all part and parcel of their 100-year plan to take down the United States and to establish a global communist empire. And they're doing it because they took over all of the influence within the World Health Organization, within the United Nations. All of these entities are beholden to China now. And it didn't take China much. Even though, for example, their Belt and Road Initiative was $80 billion to start, which you think about how much money we put into Ukraine, right? Like a couple $100 billion. That's like half, less than half. Well, they started the Belt and Road Initiative, but if you go and look at the countries, it doesn't take that much money to buy people in those countries. You're talking about mostly third world, African and Balkan countries across the U.S. to help build out their supply chains. And they went to these vulnerable countries because it was really easy. The first world left them neglected. They were easy pickings. So they go in there, they extract all of these resources, they sign deals. They're like, it's not debt trap diplomacy because we didn't actually force them to have to pay it back. No, what they did is they signed over their mineral rights. They signed over the rights for a port. So now China owns the land, right? Think about what's going on in the United States, how much farmland China owns, right?
A ton. And I mean, look at the United Michigan, for example, the DNR has claimed 4.6 million acres. Well, the state is not supposed to own land. And that's what they're doing. I mean, we've got the same structure here, whether anybody wants to admit to it or not, is what they have in China. It's the same exact thing.
Well, yeah, because in Michigan, we're ran by communists that they don't say they're communists. A lot of them call themselves democratic socialists because it's more acceptable to use that terminology, but it doesn't change the fact that they're communists. They are in alignment with the Marxist agenda. They are pushing the Marxist agenda. They're using incrementalism, and they're installing all of the systems in place for conversion. Because let's face it, a rapid change is going to be extremely messy. So the 100-year march through the institutions is the slow conversion and implementation of that system. And in Michigan, we're modeling everything that California's done, which it doesn't take a genius to figure out that they've already started implementing their Marxist agendas. Between the large cities paying out minorities for the stipends, was it like $5,000 checks or something like that? Where's that money come from? California does not, even though they say it's the largest economy in the United States, it's extremely heavily subsidized by the federal government. That economy does not float on its own. That is a sinking ship. And the only reason it floats is because the federal government subsidized the state. And I've heard it said several times across social media that the only reason socialist countries in the European Union are able to have their socialism is because we subsidize their safety. We pay for all the military equipment, all those bases. We subsidize their safety, and they're not even spending the money in their GDP that they're supposed to, according to the NATO agreement, to build their own militaries in order to defend themselves. We pick up the entire burden. Meanwhile, they're using that money to subsidize their people. And what are we doing? Well, we're paying the brunt of it. And so our jobs are no longer affordable because our government is having to hold up this social welfare burden in the United States. What do you think China's doing? China benefits every step of the way because all of the jobs, all the manufacturing is going over there. I was just watching the progression of the percentage of manufacturing in the world. They're saying by 2050, 41% of all manufacturing in the world will be in China. Almost half of the world's industry will be in one country.
That's not surprising. Have you seen the recent stuff that's come out about the fact that they are not they don't have the population that they claim to have in China?
I have not heard this.
Yeah, so there's some real disturbing things over there that we don't even know what's going on there. But we've sold so much of our equipment to China and India, our manufacturing equipment, the mills, and that sort of thing. It's not surprising to me.
Well, speaking of the mills, the UK just closed its last mill down And it turns out that steel mill was actually owned partially, if not all, by China. It was a Chinese steel mill in the UK, and they just closed it down. So they no longer have steel production, and they're talking about going to war with Russia. This is everything benefits China. There is nothing here that makes sense. War with Russia does not make sense. It pushes them. What happened when Russia invaded Ukraine? We turned off the spigot financially for them to have access to the SWIFT financial system. So what did they have to do? They joined with China to establish or to work through the Chinese SWIFT equivalent. This whole thing, everything that has transpired, all benefits China time and time and time again. We are bending the knee every step of the way, and it doesn't appear, nobody in our political infrastructure is willing to even use. It's like China's a bad word, can't use it, right? It's Voldemort.
Yeah.
If you use the word, all of a sudden it's like Beetlejuice. You can't, don't say it 3 times.
Yeah, your head's gonna start turning around in a circle or something like that.
So the crazy thing is that we're not allowed to acknowledge the threat that China is, and it really is. It's not just an emerging threat anymore. It's a real threat, and not only is it a real threat, it has siphoned off the technology and our manufacturing infrastructure from the United States. Now, we're still in a good position, and with $3 trillion now because of Trump's tariffs being committed to rebuilding U.S. manufacturing, we may be able to reverse course. Of course, this is also going to take a lot of work on our part to get that up and running, but Trump is in for 4 years, and now he's talking about potentially running again. I don't know if you heard this.
Yeah, I have. I think it's really kind of fun to watch, because you look at it and go, all right, I don't know exactly what the strategy is here, but I'm so intrigued. It's like, because I know that they've got more information than I do. Clearly, they're smarter than I am, and they have more information than I have. So it's to watch the strategy go, well, what's coming next? It's like watching a murder mystery, right? And you're trying to figure out what happened, who killed the United States, who done it, with what, with a candlestick in the library or something like that. It's kind of fun to watch.
Well, it's tragic, but it's also we were so distracted that we didn't even realize what was going on, how we were being murdered.
We're being murdered as a country. That's the way it is. But I think that this is something that, to frame this, and we were talking quite a bit, you and I are both very committed Christians, and we, I use that word because the Christian church has been infiltrated, but there are those of us that walk with God, and we believe in walking with God. It puts us in I had somebody last week that said, so, they were Jewish, and they said, so are you an evangelist? And I'm like Kenneth Copeland, who drinks blood out of a cup? No. After cutting his hand, no. And it's like, no, it's sort of, it's kind of funny. But, if you walk with God, your metric or your MO that you live your life with is much, much different. Right.
Yes.
And I think that's I got off on a rabbit trail here. I don't remember where I was going with that, but the point being is that the world isn't the way that we thought it was, and we're going to have to think differently about things, and ask some tough questions on what's going on. But to frame this, this is where I was going to go. To frame this is that there's nothing that you can do about what's happened in the past. At this point in time, it's a memory to base our future actions on, right? And how to unravel things and find accountability and that sort of thing. So I understand that a lot of people get really sad about this sort of thing. I typically will run right into the fire. It's like, okay, I'm done with the nonsense. I love, the puppies, kitties, flowers, and all that sort of thing. But in order to fix things, you've got to be willing to run into the fire and not let it demoralize you, but to go and say, well, this is where God wants me to be. I'm going to do this. I don't know how it's going to turn out. I don't know what the outcome is going to be. I just know that I'm supposed to walk. And then also find some humor in it, even though it's sick. It's like, how can these morons have thought this thing up and thought this was a great idea? Oh, there's going to come a day for them that it's going to leave a mark. There's no two ways about it. These people who are doing great evil are going to have their judgment day. Yeah. And going to find out just exactly how stupid, immoral, and worthless they actually are.
Right along those lines, every folklore story where an individual sells their soul for some talent or treasure, they all end up dying in some horrific death, and there's essentially a limitation on how long the devil lets them, or this jinn or whatever, depending on the folklore. There's a set amount of time that they're allowed to enjoy the gift or whatever treasure that they were given. And I think a lot of that time is coming due. I believe the Bible is true when it says that the meek shall inherit the earth.
It is. And I mean, look at Gollum when he falls into the fire pit, right? And I did watch that movie. We were talking about how little TV. Never play Trivial Pursuit with me because I will fail on pop culture completely. But when he's falling into the fire, my precious. That's what I think about all these people that are trafficking children and that are doing it for the money, that have betrayed the people of the United States of America, who are in politics, the traitors, the betrayers, the ones that have done it for any reason, whether they were blackmailed or not. You still have a choice. And and I do believe that when we are given a choice, that even if all choices are bad, when we do the right thing, God honors that and he makes another way. But you got to be really strong in your faith. Like, you have to truly look only at him and go, I can't even look at these things on the outside. I follow God. This is the right thing to do. And he's going to make the rest of it right and honor that, as long as we ourselves do the right thing, whether there's blackmail or anything like that. You have to do the right thing. He'll make it right.
Yeah. You have to have faith. It's the one stabilizing, foundational thing that really roots the mind grounds the mind. It keeps it from wandering and falling into the traps of the devil. But
you're going to love the Bible study I did yesterday on the reprobate mind and why people have no discernment. I did a very, very, very long Bible study that I was just like researching, going in, finding more information and trying to put it together. And that's going to be on my new website.
Nice.
I know that I've written under many different pen names over the years. Well, I've got a new one that's going to be out. That's not going to be a pen name. It's going to be all me. I'm going to take responsibility for the chaos that will ensue after this website, because it is it's naming names on who's done what, and also putting truth out there, regardless if people like it or not. It's just the way it is. And talking about the reprobate mind and how, when we have so many distractions, after a while, if you start following them, like Hollywood or the stars or other things to idolize, or having folk heroes or whatever it is that takes you away from God, how that destroys your ability to have discernment and see things clearly for good or evil. Same thing's going on right now. Oh, everybody's focused on how great a party the Republican Party is. And are you kidding me? They're more dangerous than the Democrat Party right now, because they're doing it under the guise of being altruistic.
Look what happened in Pennsylvania.
It's a foreign and domestic threat. They've taken foreign money.
Well, I mean, you can't lose a jurisdiction that was won by 15 points and then point the blame at your own people for not showing up. You're responsible for making sure we win those races. As a party, that is your responsibility. Like, that is your objective, is to win those races. And the fact that you're completely turning your back just goes to show you're complicit with undermining the restoration of the integrity to our institutions. And that's what we need to focus on. This battle for our republic doesn't end just because Trump got in. This is now the real hour is at hand for pushing back. We have historically, when Republicans win, they don't do anything. They never.
Republicans are
really,
lazy. Okay, I'm going to say it. It's like typically Republicans are lazy.
Yeah, they're the
They go-
brakes. They're the brakes on
it.
restoring the republic, while the Democrats are the gas on pushing towards cultural Marxism. So we need to either gut the party or establish new party. But either way, in order for us to restore the republic, we have got to educate our children on what it means to be an American. The history of our nation is under attack. If you look at the teachings of what's his Emron Khan or Candy or Condi or what, I forget what his name is, but anyway, all this critical race theory crap, that's garbage that they're putting out, the revisionist history. Every time communists come into power, they destroy all of the history of a nation, and they rebuild it so that it fits their model and their narrative. And one of the key things is the elimination of religion, because you can have no parallel power structure that opposes the state. And that's actually one of the reasons why Islam and communism go together so well, is because Islam is the state and communism is the state. So when your religion is the state, it is very ideal, it's simpatico with communism, because it reflects the exact same architecture of the government institution. So,
well, and I think it's important to understand, and I'm going to have a clarification here. Not all Republicans are lazy, okay? But by and large, as soon as, there's a small percentage that are actually active in trying to fight this. But when you dissect the parties and look at the amount of people that actually get involved, there's not enough to rally around, and there's poor leadership in the Republican Party in general. Very poor leadership.
And there's a massive defeatist. There's a massive defeatist morale. There's a loss of morality that's led to the defeatism. Part of it is because of all of the lack of follow through. The lack of follow through when we ask and advocate for certain things, and then they get there and then they don't do them, and people just get fed up with the disingenuous nature of the people in politics.
Right. Well, let's start back with Betsy DeVos, who literally was the one that handed the governor's office to Gretchen Whitmer. Nobody can make me be convinced that it's otherwise, because she started Republicans for Whitmer. And how can you even start Republicans for Whitmer after you've defunded the party candidate, who is also, in my opinion, a disgrace and should never be in politics, which was Tudor Dixon? They walked away from her, and then they funded Republicans for Whitmer, and Whitmer got in, and it was because of the Republicans.
Well, as long as we're going to be talking about that, I might as well bring up what else came up over last week. And Laura Loomer kind of broke this, and it was that, the Signal Gate issue with Hegseth and the message group on Signal. Well, Mike Wall's aide,
Alex Wong,
right, apparently within his group there is a individual who I was researching last night, and I wasn't sure if this was accurate or not, because I couldn't find it in the time frame that I had. But his father, I think he's related to him. Anyway, established Republicans for Biden.
Oh, that's a new one. So, yeah.
Yes. So literally within this circle of people, the guy that brings in this adversarial journalist, who's also associated with this group of people under Waltz's purview is they're all they're anti-Trumpers. So like,
So why?
yes, and Trump needs to clean that out. But also, what was pretty obvious, I brought it up right away, is because I noticed it immediately. Why are they all calling for Hegseth's removal?
Right.
Why? Because I was like, what? Did he set up the group? Like, no, he didn't set. The Secretary of Defense isn't setting up, signal chats. So why are they calling for his removal? And it turns out that this individual within this circle is associated with Tim Scott, and Senator Scott, is trying to remove Hegseth because he wants the position. That was a position that they were going to put him in, that the establishment was going to put him in, and is on track. And what is Scott a part of? The IRI. What was just mentioned earlier. Earlier, you guys brought up, you went to the website for the NED, right?
Yeah.
National Endowment for Democracy.
Democracy. Yes. Every time I hear that word, I think traitors, because it's been absolutely infiltrated and taken over. The whole term means to me, it means communist at this point in time, even though it's not the term for that it means, but because they've taken it over for politics for dummies, and used it in that direction. But go ahead.
All right. So now what I want you to do, seems like you're pulling up websites. The International Republican Institute.
Okay, hang on a minute.
The IRI.
Okay, got it.
Oh, that's not the right website.
Let me see if I can get the right one up here a minute. Oh, I think I got it here. Website. Yeah, this is like they're all playing together. It's a uniparty. Duopoly.
Yes. Well, that's it's the linguistic dialectic that they use, right? If you're either this or you're that. You're this or you're that. It's a dialectical, it's intentionally meant to force you to have to pick one of two sides, neither of which are good, both of which can be used by the opposite side to pigeonhole you into whatever they want you to do. By reducing the conversation to only two perspectives, they can maintain control over it. The moment you start having critical thinking and start to open up the scope of discussion and debate and highlight the hypocrisy on both sides, is the moment that you defeat that. And they won't give you any daylight. They won't give you any time or platform to talk those issues. They will completely shut you down. And so the dialectical warfare that is used to keep the population under the thumb, in control, under their control, is precisely what you're talking about. Republicans and Democrats. You only get to choose one, and what is it? Communist or fascist? Well, okay, so you only get to choose communism or fascism? No, I don't want either of them. Where's my republic? Where's my constitutional republic?
That's right. That's right.
No, they create this dialectical warfare intentionally to give people simple. So every time everybody does this, they want to know, is it good or bad? Is something good or bad? Not everything is good or bad. Some things are good, but there's some bad character traits about the good thing. Like,
right.
It's gray. The world is gray. And the moment you start to see the world as it is, as lots of shades of gray, the moment you can actually understand what's really going on.
I agree with you entirely. And that whole thing is what destroys discernment, because people get stuck in they always ask me, who do you follow? What do you think about this or that? I'm like, I talk to everybody, but I am not, I'm not in agreement 100% with anything or anybody, but I literally will listen and I form my own opinions, but it sure as heck is not just like wholesale, oh yeah, I follow this person or that. It's just like with President Trump. I'm an unapologetic follower, or not follower, supporter of President Trump. And the reason why I wasn't the last election was because he was unlawfully deprived his office in 2020. And because he's an American, and it needs to be considered an attack, that office was due to him, and I supported him based on that. Now I like his policies. Overall, I do like his policies. But does that mean I like everything he does? No, I think a lot of his cabinet appointments kind of suck. There's only a few of them that I actually really like. And I think as time goes on, we're going to find out that he placed them there for a different reason. That there's a strategy there. Just like, he knows, he wasn't an idiot. He knows who Mike Waltz was connected with. There's no way you get close to him without having the Secret Service and everybody else crawling up your nose, down around you, and looking at every single thing you've ever thought, touched, or been involved in. You don't just waltz in and get next to President Trump. And there you go, waltz in.
Yeah, clever. Yes, you're right. The strategy, I believe, and this is why I didn't put a lot of pressure on the Trump administration in my social media posts or anything else in the lead up to January 20th inauguration day, is because I knew that to ensure he made it actually into office, we couldn't apply too much bias. We knew that there was going to be some bad picks, but in order for him to be successful in getting the right picks in the right places that he needed initially, because let's face it, if he had gone with all the picks that they wanted, Tulsi Gabbard wouldn't be in there. There a lot of people would not be in there. Kennedy would definitely not be in there. So there's a lot of people he got in there. But at what price? So you look at a few of the picks. Rubio is one of the ones I would not have expected. I've actually been pleasantly surprised by Rubio's performance so far. I've expected him to be far more deep state oriented, and maybe he's playing his cards closer to home. But so far, I think he's actually done a much better job than I had anticipated. But as far as that whole group of deep state nominations and putting them in, I knew that what they were going to do was they would play hardball on Trump's picks to guarantee that they had the gatekeepers in position, which are the deputies. The deputy directors are absolutely critical because they are the gatekeepers for the information that gets to the director. They can slow things down, prevent them from ever getting to the director or getting moved forward. They are that gatekeeper that prevents progress from happening, could actually stifle all of Trump's agenda. So I was watching that, and for me, like the biggest, clearest indicator that we have so far a very winning strategy that's moving in the right direction is once Dan Bongino got in as deputy director, that was like the nail in the coffin, because the rest of the picks, everything else can change or modify, but that deputy director now, because I believe Dan Bongino is a good guy, I believe that he's going to actually allow Kash Patel to have access to all the information, and he's not going to pigeonhole critical information or details, but he also knows the stuff that we know with all of the political weaponization of all of the different agencies and how they've been keeping Trump from being effective. So for me, I see that as one of the critical moments, because it was supposed to be a careerist. It was supposed to be a known puppet that was supposed to have that position. And Kash Patel said, "Screw you," and put Dan Bongino in there. Or Trump. Yeah, Trump. So had him put in. So that for me was the first indicator that we are in a better position, and that the success of getting the right people in the right places is moving in the right direction. So I'm really excited to see what happens next. I'm not too thrilled with the speed on that side of things, but I'm overjoyed with the Doge progress. So I will take advances in one lane for a little bit of hold up in another. I also understand that there's been some debate on, like, do you go full bore, but then stuff falls through the cracks. So the longer we give the FBI to get into position, to clean up the ranks, to get their ducks in a row, so to speak, I think the more successful it'll be.
Right. I think it's absurd for people to think that he didn't know what was going on with this signal leak, which wasn't much of a leak, quite honestly. But it made the ones that are pitted against him, brought them out of the shadows to know exactly who his enemies are. So it's a chess game. You throw away a piece that you really don't care about to see which ones they use.
Well, remember the first Trump administration, they did the exact same thing. He had leaks all the time.
Yeah.
They were constantly having leaks. And it's because, they planted all these different people throughout. But how do you get rid of them? You have to expose them.
You got to draw them out in the open.
That's right. And so some of this stuff, there are some traps set to expose. And they said from the first couple of days of the administration, they were having leaks within ICE. That was the beginning of the war to root out the undermining establishment figures and political party operatives embedded within these agencies. And so that has already been ongoing. And DHS is a huge problem that needs to be cleaned out because of everything with CISA and all the stuff that they did with censoring the American people and Trump. That DHS is a house of cards that is, I don't know if it's going to make it through this, but I care much less and less that if it does. But there's a lot of good people in there that are trying to do the right things, that are trying to do their work. And we've seen some great successes. I would love to see some of these sanctuary cities go down, though. I'd like to see.
They have to go down.
I'd like to see sedition charges brought against the boards that voted. That everybody on those boards that voted yes to harboring illegals and terrorists, every one of them revoke their citizenship, maximum fine, maximum penalties, send them down to Guantanamo. If you do not establish the rule of law, that you do not have a country. I'm sorry. One thing is that what defines a country is its borders. If you do not have borders, if you do not have positive control over your borders, you do not have a country.
I 100% agree with you. And until we see people removed and charged for treason, I'm still not going to have this great warm fuzzy feeling. It's like, I like the direction it's going, but without saying, this is treason, this is sedition, these are crimes against this nation. How about let's call it the crimes against humanity with the human trafficking nonsense that's gone on through Catholic services, Bethany, Lutheran services, all of this. They absolutely do not pass the sniff test when it comes to what they've done. They fail every test in the fact that they are human trafficking.
Donna, do you remember during the Obama administration when they threatened to revoke the C3 status for religious institutions? Do you remember that?
Yes.
When they used the IRS, they weaponized the IRS to go after religious institutions. Why are these institutions allowed to have their status? Start revoking them. They literally engaged in a war against this country.
They sure did. And everyone that's involved in it, let's widen the scope a little bit. When you look at the invasion on our southern border, which you brought up, and I love that, I love the subject came with the La Paz Treaty. We have a 130-mile neutral zone at our southern border. Mexico, you can take refugees in from other countries, but you are not allowed to pass them through and just send them on their way. By virtue of that, Mexico literally declared war on the United States of America.
Well, not just Mexico, because it wasn't
all
just
the other nations.
This was a coordinated effort. It was deliberate. It was organized, and
it was.
And I wholeheartedly believe that everything all goes back to the Federal Reserve System. I believe that it's all orchestrated through the Federal Reserve System. I believe that they're trying to streamline world governance so they can go to their one world government. United Nations runs everything else. Everything else is administrative states. They can reduce the size. They can streamline government, go straight to the top. And they've already taken over all of these central banks. Like, the Federal Reserve System is basically just a handful of people who own the shares in all these central banks. What's the final step? Well, once you own all of them, of course you streamline them. You cut the fat. You no longer need all these extra institutions and all these different things. You consolidate them at the top. You streamline all of your governance models, and then you don't need these massive institutions. And so the whole point of building up and all these expenses in the United States was to collapse the economy, because it's the last bastion of resistance to their full-on control. It's the only place in the world where the government doesn't have the ability to take away the guns of the people, because there are so many guns in the hands of the people. Every time communism has taken over anywhere in the world, the first thing the government does is takes the weapons away from the people. It's the first thing they do. They have repeatedly, for more than 2 decades, attempted to orchestrate mass shootings in order to convince the people that guns need to be taken away. And an information campaign was launched to reinforce this narrative. And it was weaponized and organized by our own intelligence community, by vectors or groups within it. And so that's a huge threat. Why are we paying for our own demise? Well, how do you know if the Federal Reserve System's not transparent? If the Treasury Department is literally writing checks to terrorists, as was made abundantly clear when Elon pointed it out and Trump had him on in the White House on news, telling, hey, they're just writing checks. They don't validate who they're going to, whether or not they're on the restricted list or the do not pay list, all that stuff. They're just sending them out. What is the daggone
election system, doesn't it?
Yeah, exactly.
Oh my goodness. Who would have thought that,
Oh, and by the way, yesterday, that was another thing that was brought up. Elon pointed out that not only do they have Social Security numbers, but they have voted in our elections. So you have between 10 and 20 million. I think the number's closer to 30 million. At 30 million, you're close to 10% of the entire population. If you count first generation, people who currently immigrated here, whether it was legal or illegally, and second generation, you have almost, I think it's between 30 and 50 million first and second generation immigrants in the United States. Well, there's your 30% of the Democrat Party that votes hardcore leftist right there. You import all these people from communist countries and you give them all these social welfare benefits. Of course they're going to vote communist. Of course they're going to continue to believe in that model and import it and build it here. We cannot sit back and allow this to happen. And furthermore, we can't allow ourselves to be to remove Christianity from our system of government. And if that means we have to make it like a thing, then maybe we need to evaluate how that actually becomes instituted. Because back in the day, when we wrote all of our governing documents, when we declared our independence, we deem this nation to be wholly unworthy of any people other than Christians. How can you maintain a system of government if you don't all agree on core principles? How can Christians coexist with Satanists?
I think we're kind of like at odds there. I really think that's not something, because I mean, in their doctrine, they believe in human sacrifice. How can we possibly stand together in agreement with organizations that institutionalize torture, enslavement, all of that sort of thing, and human sacrifice, even animal sacrifice? I'm abhorrent at that, because I'm an animal lover, of course, and what they have been allowed to do to destroy and create suffering is horrific to me.
We have to get to some sort of standards in our government and what we all agree on and how we're going to go forward. And I think that at some point we're going to have to cross this critical decision point, and that is whether or not the United States is a Christian nation, or if it's something else. Because it looks to me like atheism and communism are both deliberate functions that undermine our system of government and our courts, completely undermine the integrity of our courts. And I just don't know how we can possibly stand for any system that deliberately undermines the rest of the integrity of the system. It's a cancer.
Well, it's like going back, we were talking about a lot of these issues in the first hour, and I did read some of my Bible study that I did on the reprobate mind and how that leads you away from discernment. So you're so chaotic because you've been immersed in lies that after a while there's no standard, there's no true north that you can find your way. And so the problem that we're having is it's like being in an adult ball crawl with things, information being thrown at you from every single direction, that unless you're grounded in what's truly right in the Bible and listening to God and walking with God, you're not going to know which ends up. And that's part of the problem. Everything is upside down. So when you go into, say, like township meetings or county meetings or state meetings or whatever, they're all, and they'll admit to it, that they're taking orders from above, whatever structure is above them in their org chart, instead of flipping it and taking the orders from we the people. They, in a government situation. But not only that, in knowing what's right and wrong. I mean, you can't tell me that if everybody turned the tap of these lies off and people had to sit with the choices that they're making without being inundated with nonsense, that they wouldn't come to a realization once the programming was broken a little bit of what really has happened and what's right and wrong. But it's going to take a little while. We've been under decades and centuries of conditioning, and it's unfortunate.
Yeah. Yep. All this conditioning has led us to this the place where we're at now, and it was done deliberately. The long road through, the long march through the institutions.
Right. I really, I was reading I'll read it again. I read it earlier in the show, as I think this is important. Titus 15:16, that to the corrupt and unbelieving, nothing is pure. Their minds and consciences are defiled, even if they claim to know God. The Bible frames this as a judicial act. God doesn't force belief, but lets people follow their chosen path. A reprobate mind isn't just confusion. It's an active preference for lies over truth, often paired with pride or self-justification. It's not random. People get there by persistently rejecting what God reveals through creation, conscience, or scripture. And I think that that's where we're at right now, is to destroy even the conscience that we have to know what's right and what's wrong. I don't understand how people can look at genital mutilation of children and say that this transitioning nonsense is okay. I don't understand it. This goes back to what you said with religion being actually a militant, a military move and such. I mean, think of Asherah. The priests used to, chop off body parts and dance around with their knives out there as part of their religion. While the trans thing is, it's a religion to a certain degree. It's not a preference, but it's being used as such. And I think that that's something that can't be.
Well, I think it's part of the satanic cult.
Yes. Yeah, I think so too. And so there's so much that I could read. The Bible study is very, very long, but it connects the dots on what's actually happened and how this has infiltrated our nation and really destroyed. I mean, Satan's after God. Okay. The war is a war on God. And the only thing that he knows to do is to hurt his children, which are his creation here. So, and I can't even believe how people who are Satanists are actually they're dumb. They're dumb as a rock. You think you're actually going to go to war with God who created this world, and you're worshiping a created being, a fallen created being too? You don't think that this is going to turn on you at some point in time? The people that follow Satan, that are Satanists, that are following this, and it comes under many, many names. They just use people. And when they're done with you, you're done. There's nowhere to turn. Who are you going to turn to after that, after you spit in the face of God? I don't really think that's going to end well, just saying.
No, it's not.
But, I digress to truth. I digress to truth and sanity and all that sort of thing.
Well, I think one of the big things to bring everything back full circle is that we have to clean up the voter rolls. We have to get voters engaged, and the dereliction in the churches to see how this is a battle. Battle at the polls is the battle that is directly related to our faith. And if we don't get serious about taking control of that, we are damning ourselves. We are putting ourselves in the position of being damned. I'm sorry, but we put ourselves in this position. When we choose not to participate,
you're guilty.
Then you're guilty. You're just as guilty. Yeah. When you choose to just say, no, we'll let Satan rule, that's what you're doing.
Yeah, I don't want to be bothered. I don't want to get involved in this. So I'm just going to sit back because I don't want somebody to disapprove of me. That's the crux of it. You know what? I hope they disapprove of me, because I want to be disapproved of by people who are Satanists or who have followed this. I don't want their approval. I want them to be afraid of the fact that there's backlash to this. This Gentile Jesus with a lamb on his foot nonsense that's been sold throughout, Christendom is nonsense, absolute nonsense. There's a point in time where the judgment of God's going to fall, and he's coming back as a roaring lion, and it's going to be bad. It's like, all right, everybody out of the pool. Were you involved in this? Did you sit back? Did you watch this happen and you weren't convicted? Why weren't you convicted? Did you put self over this? And, it's like, there's so many lies that have been told about what a believer in Christ is, or somebody who walks with Christ, because that's been infiltrated. It's not that we think we're better than anyone. We're just forgiven. And we're here to try to walk like God walks and learn to be like him and serve here on the nation as God's servant and representative. We're ambassadors. That's it. But we're not any better. We're here to help and to serve without looking at the payback. If you're looking at somebody who says they're a Christian and there's a payback involved in it, I will guarantee you that they're an imposter. Guaranteed.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of them out there. I'm going to tell you what, it's just like, I posted this thing with Kenneth Copeland cutting his hand with another person from their cult. It's a cult is what it is. It is a cult. You have to do this or we will not accept you. And that is a cult. he cut his hand, and the other guy that was standing on their altar of Satan cut his hand, and they let their blood drip into this cup, and he drank it, and you could see the instant transformation in this Satanist's eyes. He's a Satanist. He drank blood from a cup on the altar and said that it was of God. Not believing this at all. It was and his eyes like changed. All of a sudden he's like all kinds of freaky. I'm like, dude, you guys are looking in the eyes of a straight up demon right here. I hope you have the discernment to know what you're looking at and following. You're following a demonic manifestation, an imposter. But if you don't have discernment, you're going to roll right into the trap. And guess what? When they're done with you, you're going to be standing all alone. You're going to talk to God then after you spit in his face. Probably not going to be a good moment for you. You know,
I've got a video I'll have to send you. I watched this weekend. It's a former satanic cult member. He joined the Mormon Church. He was a 33rd degree Mason. And now he's a Christian, and he's basically, he tells all about his journey from basically the dark side, and the path. It's very intriguing, but it does paint quite the picture of what the belief system is and how they operate, as well as like the level of infiltration into various organizations. And he points out that there's a lot of symbolism and a lot of occult stuff that goes on in various institutions that the average person has no idea what it is, because they don't recognize it. They haven't been taught to recognize it. They don't understand it. So until someone points it out as what it is, they have no idea. They're going along with a lot of these things, and they don't have the discernment to see that of what it is. And I think that I'll send you this video so you can maybe you'll be able to reach out to this guy and get him on your show. But
I would love that, because this is the problem with the Christian church in America, which I believe is completely apostate. And you can see that with the ones that closed down to keep their 501c3s and 4s, because they were getting kickbacks. And they closed their churches instead of being what they were supposed to be, which is serving people, and not based on how much money they're grifting off the government and sitting there in their churches and whatever. Jesus went to people's homes. He did not, he was completely disgusted with what he was seeing there. And he was a provocateur, and he didn't give anything. I'm not going to
stood up to the Pharisees.
What's
he
that?
told right to their face. He stood up to the Pharisees. He told the Jewish leadership to basically that they were committing sins.
I'll tell the Christian leadership, the Islamic leadership, and the Jewish leadership, you're all a den of thieves and you're liars, all of them. It doesn't make any difference, because they've cannibalized and they've come into everything which was supposed to be good, and they've destroyed it. And you can clearly see it. Look at the fighting that's going on in the world. It is all right out there through their infiltration. And I'm so done with it. I'm just so done with it.
Well,
it has to be called out for what it is.
Let me tie that in with your earlier discussion with Davis. All of these institutions target the vulnerable minds of the young, and they do it through the schools and your educators, and they also do it through the universities. This is the institutional indoctrination. But why it's so important at that time is when the mind is forming to create the imagery that allows them to control those individuals as they get older. They see who the enemy they want them to see is. So when, for example, you may hear this term thrown around, the 1%. The whole idea is that it's the proletariat. All of this stuff that they're establishing in the schools is to get the minds of the young to turn against their established. their established order is to rebel against God, right? The whole thing is essentially rebellion against God. If you think about the 10 Commandments and respect your elders, but what are they teaching? They're teaching them to rebel against their elders. They're teaching them that all these different things, and then they push them into these institutional programs like that are Peace Corps and I shared that one video about the economic hitman and how they use Peace Corps, and then this end up in the CIA and all that. But that is how they shape and mold the minds and identify the susceptible individuals to control and push these narratives. But they're the foot soldiers. They bring them up through the institutions.
Yeah, it's really tragic. And I mean, to parents out there, it is your responsibility to raise up your children and not put them into this cult of America, which is the establishment. It really is. I mean, the whole thing is a cult. We have an economic cult. You get rewarded by playing by their rules economically, and they'll give you a place in what is going on globally. They're great in promises. Your children are in a cult. To teach them to be good workers, but not critical thinkers. What are you going to do if you hand all the time of your children over to somebody else to raise them? They go to school, they go to athletic events, they go to all of these extracurricular things. If you think that having 10 minutes a day with them, where you're just in the car running from one event to another, is teaching them anything you believe in, you're going to be very sadly mistaken, because someone else that actually wants to spend time with them is going to.
Yeah, and this lends itself really well into the Bezmenov psyop, which is they have full control over the minds of your young. But now, even if you wanted to, for the vast majority of Americans, even if you wanted to teach your kids, how much exposure and knowledge do you have to teach your kids? They have done this generationally. They have destroyed this. It literally require a massive shift in the way things are done. And I think that's, removing the Department of Education and getting the people who are in a good place to educate people. But everybody's going to struggle at finding how to learn to critical think. And you can't say, oh, we're just going to use AI, or this is going to be a very tumultuous time as we readjust to understanding how to educate ourselves and think independently and think critically.
Well, I homeschooled my kids, that. And I'm going to tell you what, when I was just convicted, I'm like, I'm not putting my kids in school and let them teach my children to hate people and God, because it's constantly dividing up, right? Constant competition and that sort of thing. So I didn't know what I didn't know when I got into it, just like I didn't with politics, but I wasn't afraid of it. And I'm like, well, this has got to be done. So I guess I'm going to just jump in the pool and learn to swim, because that's how you learn new skills. You don't have to be the best. You don't have to know really anything, but you need to be willing to jump into the pool, and God will provide the rest of it for you. And I'm going to see if there is a site here that I think they do a pretty good job if you can get to the right place. And it's there's a lot of curriculum sellers out there. Now, I wrote a lot of my own curriculum because I did it very differently. I don't believe in sitting down with a book and just learning things off the dead page. I wanted my kids involved in it. But let me see. We have I'm looking for the scope and sequence charts. And that is the place to start for anyone who wants to homeschool your children. Is you've got to know what really is a good course for them to know, just basic knowledge. And let me see if I can find this a minute. Here we go. Oh, let me try one more. I just about had it. And I will bring this up because I think this is a wonderful. Okay, here we go. I'll put this up because I love this. And if anybody wants more information, y'all know my phone number. I've had it out there multiple times. So this is Sunlight Curriculum, and they have a real good scope and sequence charting on here, and it's very, very good. If you go in here and you start looking at what people really what your kids really should kind of know, just as a base level. It doesn't mean to follow it exactly, because I didn't, but it helps you to know what you here. Let's see if I can do it. Let me see if I can do a download here a minute. What there's, so let's start at ages 5 to 7, and let's do a 4-day, let's do a 5-day curriculum and see if we can get in here. I think this is wonderful. Research.
Yeah.
And they've done a really good job. So we've got by the weeks. So what they're supposed to learn by the weeks. We do memory work. We do Bible study, geography, biography, and it goes up from there. And there's books that go with it, but there's also other things that you can add. And there's an overall chart that they have too, which I didn't click on the right one, on what they're supposed to know in each grade. And it's pretty complete, so that you can go through. Let me see. So that you can go all the way through what they're supposed to know, just so that you have a knowledge of it. So let's just say you want to know what they need to know, math or language arts. Here we go. Let's go back to this again. You can go by age, you can go by grade and what they're supposed to know, and they'll give you topics: traditional, a second sweep through history if you want to teach it again, or a third sweep through. Then you have language arts, what they're supposed to know, and then matching things up. This is very integrated. It's a wonderful curriculum, actually. They have science, what they're supposed to know in each of the grades. Okay, so ages 5 through 6, animals, plants, weather, climate, forces, and motion with STEM hands-on activities and experiments. They give you everything. So if you become familiar with this and read what you're teaching, so we have down here, you've got ages 13 to 15, Berean earth science, 100 level discovering design with earth science over general properties of the earth's geosphere, hydrosphere, and atmosphere. I'm going to click on this, see what they've got there, just because I'm curious. Now, so you're going to be able to buy like different packages, including the hands-on things you need to accomplish it. I did a whole language approach, so I didn't necessarily buy this kind of stuff because I created my own, but I did do their literature, and the literature portion of Sunlight is fantastic, but they're not the only ones. There's many curriculums out there, but just look up scope and sequence charts. And then, so like here's Horizons, you can use Horizons. They've got different things here. Math, counting by 1s, 2s, 5s, 10s, 3s, and etc. on up, so that you can know what a logical progression of what you are teaching, what you should teach, and how to go from one subject to the next, so that it's, you start here, here's your basics, now let's build on that knowledge, and this is the next step. And it's wonderfully helpful to new homeschoolers to understand how to make those transitions without going through pedagogy and all the other stuff, and understanding to do it as, say, like a professional teacher. And quite honestly, I do believe that a parent is the best teacher for their children, hands down. The way that the schools have it right now is so wrong. I mean, absolutely ineffective and wrong. You drop your kids off and you leave. This is not the way that the world is supposed to work. If parents were running the schools and working together in it, you'd see a dramatic change in the intelligence level of children, the intelligence level of adults, because while you're teaching your kids, you're learning. It really is a wonderful way to go on many levels.
During COVID, I ordered the Hillsdale curriculum, and so we started that one. But I got this website now saved, bookmarked for later.
Yeah, the really good part of Sunlight is even if you just buy the books to go with the scope and sequence. So let's just say you buy all the literature books, you get a big box, and I'm not getting anything out of this. Okay, this is just because I could tell you about a lot of different systems out there that that I've looked through and I've gone through and such. I just happen to know this one, and I did buy the literature books when my kids were in school to go with the scope and sequence of what was expected at that age. And the books were great. They're fantastic. And so I know I'm not getting any kickback from us. I'm not pushing this. This is not something that I'm a partner in any way, shape, or form. It's just a product I used when, 25 years ago when my kids were little. And it's just gotten better. So there you go. But it's just a resource. There's a lot of them out there. And I'm not familiar with the Hillsdale one. I'm familiar with a lot of the other ones. Like ABACA was a big thing when my kids were there, as well as several of. I don't particularly like something that's just workbooks.
Well, my daughter and youngest son started watching was Little House on the Prairie, which is it's interesting. It's a lot of the old. Before electricity, right? All the things that people did, their daily life and routine is so much drastically so different. And so for them to see that, I think is alone is immensely valuable, but also like how much religion and Christianity played in their daily lives as well.
I started the day out with my kids with Bible. And we would, I had a chart. I made them accountable just like I would anyone that had a job to do. They literally had a checklist for the day and they had to go down that checklist. They were up at say 7 o'clock. They had their breakfast and their teeth brushed by X time. And then they moved into their day. And so I listed everything that they needed to do that day and required them to turn the checklist in to me, so that they learned a structure of accountability, of time management, of being responsible for following a plan, so that there was actually a gain there. There wasn't just like wandering around aimlessly. And
Donna, that sounds so horrible. Oh my gosh, you're such a
oh no.
I can't even keep a straight face.
Yeah. Oh no. Like I expected my kids to do their laundry at 10 years old. 10 years old.
How else are they going to learn their life skills? I mean,
I swear to you, as I got to college, I knew so many people in college, and I'm an old guy, okay?
Yeah.
Like I'm like way old. I'm way older than you. I'm an old guy, right? It was funny to me, and I love being an old guy. I don't want to be a young guy. I don't want to go back to the same stupid I was in my 20s, right? I'll be in my 60-year-old stupid, which has a little bit more basis and knowledge, right? But it's like, I couldn't believe how many people could not and had never done their own laundry at 18 years old. I was absolutely shocked. My kids did their own laundry, folded their laundry, put their laundry away at 10 years old. They did any job in the household chores that an adult was expected to do. There was no way that I was going to let my kids make me into their servant and sit there like a princess sitting on a stage. It wasn't going to happen, and to this day, I think that all those skills that we learn working with our families and being part of an organization, the smallest form of government, your family, you have to have participation. The fact that kids get up and get on their not just social media, which usurps the family unit horribly, but they get on, and the minute they get on, they got their gaming on. They're playing games.
Yeah.
What are they learning about life skills? Nada. What are they learning about how the world works? Nada. They're learning how to defeat Pikachu, for gosh sakes. Do I have anything against Pikachu? Not specifically. However, the process is...
You're anti-Pikachu.
I'm not anti... No, I'm not anti-Jew. I'm not anti-Palestinian. I'm not anti-Chinese. I'm not anti the people. Not anti-Pikachu. I'm not anti any of this nonsense. It's the structure that in the governance that I think is ridiculous.
Yeah, well, we have a lot of restoring to do to get our republic back on track.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I think this is a great place to be anti going on any further today. And let's see if I'm you know me pretty well. It's like I'm a total smart aleck, about everything. I'm just but there it goes back to that point of find humor in things, even if they seem horrific. If they do, get involved, but you're going to have to find ways to cope with it, and find ways to be amused at certain aspects of it. Otherwise, you won't be able to cope through this.
Right.
So there you go. So you want to say the prayer? Or you want me to?
Let me let you lead us in the show here.
Okay, that's fine. I'm good with anything. Dear Heavenly Father, thank you so very much for this time together, and for Vicky and for Jason and all the wonderful people who are in fact willing to give their time, their treasure, and their sacred honor to stay for this nation and put forth an effort, even to the point of educating each other. The people that have put out posts, we're so thankful for them, and continue to stand on truth, even if they're totally rejected by their families or their social networks that they're involved in, but that they're willing to stand for what it is that you put on their hearts to do their work here in this world. We're so thankful for your guidance that you've given us. And we're thankful for even the hard times you give us, because they teach us, they mold us, they teach us to be strong. They push us into directions that we would never in a million years choose to go to by ourselves, as you lead us into these areas, and we do grow. We grow up. It's not an easy process, but you know what? We're thankful for that. We're thankful that you didn't let us run around and just be spoiled little snowflakes that expect the world to dote on us and serve us. You've taught us to be adults who put our mind on the service of this world, and and following you, doing what it is that you ask us to do without any fear of consequence or payback of anything. It's just the fact that we can stand with you and be with you and walk with you that we're so thankful for, and everything you've done for us. You've been a great friend to us, and we want to be a friend to you this day. We walk forward in your peace, your strength, your leading, your guidance, and your provision. Thank you. Thank you so much for everything you do for us. In the name of Jesus Christ, we pray. Amen.
Amen.
So, there we go. Here we go, boys and girls. That part of the show. Ding, 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 ding. This is my 2022 protest. Go to brandenburgforgovernor.com, because I'm the best non-conceder who has ever not conceded in the history of the United States of America. And I want to have a discussion with President Trump, the rightful president of the United States, about things. Wearing cowboy boots. Let's see who wears them better. Me. So, because I wear them all the time. So there you go. So let's go forward, guys, and have a great day today, and be a force for good, because God put it in you. It's the way you were built. He built into you the path to him, and also the desire and the knowledge of what is good and bad. He gave you a conscience. Just go ahead and grab hold of that and start listening to him. Pick up his word and start reading, asking him what he's trying to tell you with it. It's a living word. He will talk to you through his Holy Spirit, which is a wonderful process. A little bit rocky sometimes a little crazy, but always good. So have a great day today. God bless you all. God bless all those whom you love, and God bless America. And we're proud to stand with you. We'll see you tomorrow with John Tater's going to be on tomorrow, and I'm not sure who's going to be on in the second hour yet, because my schedule's a little bit up in the air. I'm here, there, and everywhere on Recon. I'm going to be on Recon again for part of this week, which is going to be fun, I think. So have a great day.